And we are watching right now as that looks like they are standing. That may mean the jury is likely coming into the courtroom. We are waiting on a verdict. This is kind of the moment that the Tri-Cities have been waiting on for some time now, is the verdict announcement in the Megan Boswell murder trial. Of course, the jury had not been brought in. Now, Megan is in the courtroom. Now the jury would come in at this point in time. So.
And I just want to let people know, if they're just joining us, Preston, here's how this is working. The judge has asked that we do not have live stream audio of the jury reading the verdicts, because he wants to make sure that he protects their identities, and he does not want their voice heard of the jury foreman. So what we have done is I have Liam Bridgman on the phone right now. He's in the media room.
He's in a separate room. He's not in the courtroom.
He's not in the courtroom. He's not allowed to have a phone in the courtroom. He is in a media room where he is listening to the verdict being read aloud. That is what is supposed to happen. The judge is supposed to allow us to unmute our camera so that we can hear, so that he can hear it.
He's watching on a separate feed. The technical side of this, Liam in the media room is watching on a separate feed, separate from what you're watching this. There's one camera feeding out. Everybody, wherever you're watching it from, is
You'll be watching it silent.
It will be watching in silent. And then so we are relaying to, it's a little unorthodox to how you would normally see this happen, but it's the best way we can get it to you as it is announced in court. And then what the judge will then, once for media purposes, is going to announce it, but we're going to relay it through Liam, and then we'll
do
go
have
through
permission.
one by one.
Yes, one by one. So we do have permission, though, to show Megan Boswell, so that if you watch the live stream, you'll be able to see her reactions. You can listen to us and watch the live stream.
You're going to see her, and,
so that
and basically what the camera is changing to here. That is kind of how, now she'll stand when it comes time to read the verdict, but that it will be the shot that we will have is of Megan Boswell. Of course, the first one is first-degree murder, and then the two felony murder charges. One
for aggravated child abuse felony murder, aggravated child neglect felony murder. So 2 felony murder charges, but for different things.
Different circumstances surrounding that of how you can find that. Then there's the aggravated child abuse and child neglect charges, which can in their own carry very lengthy sentences.
Absolutely.
Just if that were the only thing we were dealing with here, those can, if a conviction there, can lead to long-term sentences under state law there. And then, of course, tampering with evidence and false report are not quite as lengthy times in jail for those. But the top of that docket, or the top of the indictment, is definitely the ones that a lot of folks are curious about.
All right. You keep talking, Preston. I'm going to check in with Liam and just see if he can give us any idea.
So this is
all right. Maybe a few more minutes, according to Defense Attorney Gene Scott.
Okay, so we are waiting to see, once they come in, the jury, they'll ask them to publish the verdict, and oftentimes they'll take the verdict over to the judge. He will look at it, send it back over, and the foreman then will publish their findings. And then after it's over, they will poll the jury. If they see them doing that, they'll go through and ask them, is juror number 1, number 2, is this your finding? So we can see that happen. But that's typically after they get through all of those 2019 and counting indictments there. So,
and we're going to pop that up on the bottom of your screen. You're going to be able to see
to follow along where we are, and you'll know what the verdict is and what it is as we're going through this. We have it built in so that you can see what that decision was as we go through it. So you're not having to try to keep track at home where we are, but as we will announce those as they are announced in court. So,
all right, the jury the courtroom is standing, so that means the jury is being brought in.
Definitely some tense moments in that courtroom. A lot of folks in the community wants to know what happens with Evelyn Boswell and Megan Boswell's murder trial. So the verdict is in. If you've just joined us right now, we are waiting on this to be announced, and then as that comes, we will relay that to you of what is decided. So once the jury is in, they'll ask them if they have reached a verdict. We were just talking in the newsroom a moment ago. The jury had not asked any questions. A lot of times we see in a case like this, they'll come back and ask the judge a legal question or this or that. We hadn't heard from them. They were out roughly 5 hours, and we never heard from them. They did 3 hours yesterday and not quite 2 this morning.
Yeah, and that is typical, where a juror would come in and ask a question. Wait, I need to clarify this. But honestly, the judge has been so thorough in this case that I feel like his little booklet was not so little.
It was 81 pages.
He outlined exactly how this needs to be handled and how they need to discuss this and the burden of proof that needs to be met and all that. Here it goes.
All right, so we are zooming in now. We are waiting. So this is, again, we won't be able to hear the sound from the courtroom. Our camera there is muted so that we don't hear the jury foreman talking. But the judge will be talking with the jury at this point. And we can stay full on the courtroom if you want to.
Hold on. Guilty of first-degree murder.
Guilty on first-degree murder. There's your first verdict is in. Guilty on first-degree murder. The next one we'll go down to will be felony murder. Waiting on this to be announced. Of course, there is the we don't have audio from the courtroom while the
jury find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder. Okay.
Guilty of first. So we're still waiting on that one. We have several more counts to go here, but that is the big one there.
Okay, each juror is raising their right hand.
That is
to swear that they all agree. Guilty of count 2.
Count
guilty
2, that is
on
felony
count
murder.
3.
Count 3 is felony murder. That's the 2 felony murders for aggravated child abuse and aggravated child neglect. So we have 3 murder convictions so far.
Guilty of aggravated child abuse.
Aggravated child abuse, and then the next one we're waiting on is count 5. That is aggravated child neglect. So far, we have 3 murder convictions and an aggravated child abuse conviction right now, waiting on the decision.
So now they're swearing that they all agreed to that.
So
count 5, here we go.
This will be aggravated child neglect.
Guilty of aggravated child neglect.
So far, all guilty verdicts right now. Count 5. The next one we'll wait on will be that tampering with evidence. Altering or destroying, concealing evidence with the intent, ability to find that. It's count 6 in this indictment. So far, it's been all guilty verdicts at this point.
And now all the jurors are individually raising their right hands to swear that they agree with that verdict. This is happening with each one.
Again, we can't hear the jury foreman.
Count 6, tampering with evidence. Guilty.
Guilty. Now we have a host of false reports, count 7 through 17. So about 10 of these we will see.
Okay, so once again, the jurors are all raising their right hands to swear that they all reach the same verdict. Count 7, false reporting. Guilty. She's been assessed a fine.
Okay. Another false report charge. These next several here will be false reporting.
All right, here we go. Count 8, more false reporting. Guilty. Don't forget, she told multiple stories.
Many stories throughout this. If you're just tuning in, we do have a first-degree murder conviction and 2 felony murder convictions for Megan Boswell. So far, all guilty verdicts as we make our way through this indictment. We're waiting on count
Each juror has raised their right hand for every count thus far.
So you had the unanimous decision, a decision of 7 men and 5 women.
Count 9, false reporting. Guilty.
We'll have another.
And they
false
have
report.
assessed a fine.
That's gonna. This will probably.
Which they're not giving yet.
That will come as that. The sentencing phase. Now, the jury will be involved in the sentencing phase in the first-degree murder portion of this. We heard the judge telling them that. They'll move into that after this. So that'll be the next task for this jury.
Count 10, false reporting. Guilty.
All right. That was from statements she made on February 18th of 2020 is what that count in particular was related to. We're looking to another false reporting here from statements she made on February 19th.
Count 11, false reporting. Guilty.
Guilty there on false reporting. We have a couple of more false report charges there. Again, Megan Boswell has been found guilty of first-degree murder and 2 felony murders, guilty of every count in the indictment thus far. We're still making our way through these false reports. This is a charge from count 12 is from February
Count
the
12,
20th.
false reporting. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty.
And there we go. We'll have another one coming up as well, also from something on or about February 20th of 2020. Each of these different times that she was interacting has led to a specific charge in this case. Watching Megan Boswell, who's been...
Count 13, false reporting, guilty.
Again, we are not hearing the jury foreman. We're getting this relayed to us through our Liam Bridgman, who's in a media room. The all audio coming from the courtroom is muted right now.
Count 14, false reporting, guilty.
Also from the incident there on February the 20th of 2020. We have another false reporting charge as well. This is related to our conversations with the TBI and Sullivan County Sheriff's Office. Some of these were some of the videos we saw.
Count 15, false reporting, guilty.
Another one on count 16, that is the false reporting charge, and reality appears to be setting in a little bit there for Megan Boswell. She's been crying since that first-degree murder conviction was announced. Again, first-degree murder, guilty. 2 counts of felony murder, guilty. We have been guilty all the way down so far. We've made our way to count 16 in this indictment.
Count 16, false report, guilty.
Got one more false report charge, then we'll move on to the other 2 remaining charges in this case. This is not a death penalty case. They did seek life in prison, so there will not be a death penalty capital punishment decision in this. The state did not choose to go after that in this case, so it is a life in prison or with or without parole.
Count 17, false report, guilty.
All right, so that is guilty on all false report charges. You may remember at the start of the trial, they did drop one of those false reports. There was originally a count 18, a false report that was dropped. So I believe now the next charge in this we should be hearing would be abuse of a corpse.
Count 18. Oh, yes. Count 19. Abuse of a corpse.
18 was pulled, so we're at 19 in the indictment. So we are... One more charge here would be failure to report a death under suspicion, unusual or unnatural circumstances. We count 20 of the total indictment. This one dates back to when...
Count 20. Failure to report a death under suspicious, unusual, or unnatural circumstances. Guilty.
That is it. Guilty on all charges, all 19 counts. A complete decision there from that jury of 7 men and 5 women. Megan Boswell convicted on every count that she was charged with, including that big one of first-degree murder, 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. Now looking at life in prison. The question is, will she have a chance at parole after serving 51 years? But life in prison.
So right now the judge is asking if either side would like to pull the jurors in this case. It looks like it's being declined.
And in that case, where they would go through and ask juror number 1, number 2, is this your decision? Is this your decision? And ask them all if that is what is happening. So it looks like the defense attorney is going to make some questions there. Again, we can't hear what is happening. I'm not sure when our audio will be allowed to be turned back on in the courtroom. As soon as we're allowed to turn that sound back on, we'll take you in there and listen into what's happening in that courtroom. And Judge Jim Goodwin's.
The jurors are being dismissed currently, temporarily. I believe the sentencing phase is happening. The
sentencing phase will come.
Shortly.
He did tell them that if that was in his instructions yesterday, that if they did find guilty on first-degree murder, we would immediately go into a sentencing phase. That'll be the next job that they have to do in this. So they'll begin the sentencing phase on that first-degree murder conviction. So we'll wait and see how that happens. We could be back with you today and on however long it takes them to make that decision. But right now, we imagine the judge will publish those findings. We may be able to hear into the courtroom at this point in time. But again, Megan Boswell, you see it on your screen right there, guilty on all 19 counts, including that first-degree murder and 2 felony murder convictions.
He's reading the charges again. Guilty on first-degree murder, guilty on felony murder, aggravated child abuse, guilty on felony murder, aggravated child neglect.
We can hear it.
3,
let's
the
listen.
jury of your peers having found you guilty of first-degree murder and the perpetration of a felony. It's a judgment of this court. You are guilty. And count 4, a judgment of your peers having found you guilty of aggravated child abuse. It's a judgment of the court. You are guilty. In count 5, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of aggravated child neglect, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 6, the jury of your peers having found you guilty of tampering with evidence, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 7, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 8, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 9, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 10, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 11, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 12, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. Count 13, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. Count 14, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 15, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 16, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 17, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of false report, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In count 19, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of abuse of a corpse, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. And in count 20, a jury of your peers having found you guilty of failure to report a death under suspicious, unusual, or unnatural circumstances, it's the judgment of the court, you are guilty. In counts 4 through 20, the jury did not assess a fine, so there'll be no fine assessed in those counts. Now we'll be in recess about 15 minutes.
Thank you.